Welcome back, everyone. The Idaho closed has, at this point, already finished, but we are going to look at rounds 3 and 4 today. So let's start with round 3. Right now I am on 2 out of 2, and in round 3 I get paired against a 1700, but my opponent is very young and is probably very underrated, so let's see what happens and try not to embarrass ourselves. So we get e4, c5, knight f3, and we get this accelerated dragon, and I actually was not expecting this. But I've played this like countless number of times online with black and white, and we're gonna see proof of that in a bit. But we get knight c3, bishop g7, bishop c4, and queen a5. So this queen a5 line, the idea is to basically force white to castle kingside. So then after black also castles kingside, it just becomes a normal game without attacking on both sides. So I castle, and now my opponent plays queen to b4, trying to cheese me. And there are a lot of cheeses here. The simplest one is after bishop b3, you just lose the pawn due to the pin. Another cheese is queen d2, trying to break the pin. I've actually gotten a lot of players here. I've gotten NMs in Blitz. I've gotten like people in Rapid. But knight takes e4 just wins a pawn because after queen takes, you just lose the knight. Hold on, let me close some tabs. Okay. And another cheese is when white plays f3. This is the most complicated one, but you can go queen b4, attacking the bishop and the pawn. And after bishop to b3, you can actually take this pawn because it's you have these three attackers now. And so if pawn takes, you just take. If knight takes c6, you don't take back because then the pawn takes, but you actually take the knight first, and then you take like this, attacking the bishop, so the king has to go to e2, and then you recapture the knight with the pawn because the knight is immune due to this skewer with the bishop. So the pawn takes opens up the bishop. Okay, so there's a lot of cheese here, but after white castles, there are actually no cheeses, and the best move is just to castle queen side. So after queen b4, I knew that this was a mistake. However, I didn't actually know. I've played, as I said, I've played this exact setup a lot of times online, and I knew that bishop b3 was the correct move. So the computer says queen e2 is also okay, but I know that bishop b3 is completely okay. But after knight takes e4, I wasn't exactly sure the exact way to punish it because there's only one way to punish this, and if you don't punish it, you're just down a pawn. So I actually spent a lot of time thinking before playing bishop to b3, and I recalled a game that I thought this game was pretty recent, like a year ago. This game happened in 2020, so this is making me feel really old. But this game happened in this happened in 2020 March, almost 4 years ago. And it was a rapid game. I was only 1800 rapid at that time. So we got e4. We got this exact position, like the exact move basically, except yeah, queen b4. And I tried to play queen b4. Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, you can see the board. Okay, so and now I took, and my opponent takes on c6. Plays a3, and then knight takes c3, queen f3, attacking this. Actually, I should show you the game first, and then I'll show you this one. But I recalled that game, and I remembered specifically that there was this queen f3 idea to attack f7, but I didn't remember exactly what point it was. So instead, after knight takes e4, I thought for a long time, and I finally found knight takes c6, because so the candidate moves are like knight d5, queen f3 immediately, and a3 or something. Knight d5 just allows queen a5 guarding, and queen f3 you can move the knight back. There's actually another game that where that happened online, and I'll show that one as well. And the other move is a3, but then that runs into takes. And then after queen f3, attacking, there's actually knight to e5. And for this reason, knight to e5, you have to take the knight first, and then play a3 to kick the queen off of the knight. And now after takes, you go queen to f3, attacking the pawn. So now my opponent checks me on e2. I go to h1, queen to g4 now. What my opponent has to do now is sacrifice the queen and move the knight back and try to play with the two pieces and the pawn for the queen. So not too bad at all, and computer doesn't even put it past +1 for white. So my opponent should have done this, but it's kind of hard psychologically to sacrifice your queen. Instead, my opponent goes queen to g4, but this just loses on the spot because the king is too open. I have the two bishops, and the rook's coming to the d file. So the game finishes quickly. I centralize the queen. bishop to f5, rook d1 check, bishop d7. And now I sacrificed the rook with rook takes d7. I could also take, but I knew that it was unlikely that my opponent would resign because my opponent's a young player. So I tried to just end the game as fast as I can with rook takes d7. And if the king takes, obviously there's rook to d1 and like bishop to e6. So after queen takes d7, bishop to e6, removing the queen. And after queen d6, there's a very nice checkmate in 5 moves. You can try to pause the video to see if you can find the checkmate in 5. So if you said queen to a5, congratulations, you looked for checks. And this is kind of setting up the kind of a Bowden's mate with the bishops and the diagonals here. So pawn to b6 is played, queen takes b6, bishop takes b6 is also playable, but the queen was closer to the pawn, so I just took with the queen. It's also fancier. Bishop takes b6, queen to c7 is forced, and now rook to d1 check ends the game in a very, very gorgeous, very beautiful checkmate. Okay, so I won game 3, and let's look at those 2 games that I was talking about. In this first one, we had queen to f3. I also went for knight to e2, so I'm on the black side of this game. So this is the other side of this variation, which is just winning for white. Again, I have to take the bishop, but instead of going queen to h4, my only idea is to try to checkmate white. So check takes the rook, bishop to f7, going for this rook. I just have to try to get something over here. I'll play c5, kind of a desperate move, and my opponent just blunders this checkmate in 3. Uh, so yeah, my opponent just blunders checkmate in 3 in this rapid game with 6 minutes on the clock. So that was that game. Obviously should have lost this game, and then we have another game, also another online game, where we had this exact same variation with queen b4. And my opponent actually played knight takes c6 correctly, but after queen to f3, this is rushed. He has to play a3 first, so I can just move this knight back, trade queens, and then I think I won this game if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, okay. So I also won that game. So I made that mistake twice, and I wasn't punished for it. Unfortunately, my opponent in this round made the same mistake and was punished. But I moved to 3 out of 3, and we go to the next game. So now I'm in round 4. I get black against my opponent, and this opponent I've played a couple times. The first time I played this opponent was when I was 7 years old and like 1200, but I actually got a really good position at one point, but I did lose that game. So and then I also played this opponent last year in round 5, and I drew that game where I was in a really bad position. It was opposite colored bishops, and I did manage to draw that game, which set me up for that last game, which is also in another video. So we got d4, I'm black here, and my opponent plays the Catalan. And a funny story, I was on board 1, board 2 was next to me, and in board 2 we played like the exact same moves, like maybe a slightly different move order, but we kept getting the exact same position at the exact same time. So like my opponent played bishop g2, board 2 plays bishop g2, I castle, they castle, white castles. So we were all like just laughing at each other's boards here. But finally, white plays knight b to d2, and then the other board gets knight to c3. So we finally break the copycat. So I play knight to d7. This is all very, very normal. b3 fianchettoing. I also play b3 fianchetto. Bishop b2, and now I play c5. So c5 here this is an okay time to play c5 because there's a lot of support in the center, and white has this d4 pawn isn't as supported really. So my opponent takes. I take back with the bishop. Now I'm ready to move the rook to c8, and black is basically already equalized here because he has good center and good, pretty decent pieces. Knight to e5 now. Knight to e5 is a little bit suspicious. It puts the knight in the center, but it just allows me to take and now kick the bishop with this knight on g4, and it's pretty active. And this knight actually, foreshadowing, stays on g4 for the rest of the game. So it's never kicked away by the pawn. So I'm attacking the bishop, bishop drops back to c3. I play rook to c8. Another move here was queen to e7, which would protect this bishop on b7, which is useful. I play rook to c8 instead. We get b4 kicking the bishop. Now bishop drops back, queen a5, and what I was expecting here was queen to b2, which would double up this kind of battery attacking g7. And I'd probably have to drop back the knight, and we'd still have a game, but it kind of forces my knight to retreat without having to push a pawn in front of the king. And now both pieces just continue developing, or yeah, just keep improving the positions. But after queen to a4, this queen is kind of misplaced on the edge of the board. You really don't want to be using your queen solely to go after pawns. Now it is stepping out of a discovered attack, but on the side of the board here, it's just not active enough. So here I actually see a very enterprising idea, pawn to d4. And I spent some time calculating this idea, and it turns out that I can sacrifice in exchange. So I play d4, attacking this bishop and attacking this bishop here. If my opponent moves, then I just simply trade, and I have a really strong center, and I also have targets over here. So this would be really good. Instead, my opponent takes on b7. Now I take on c3, attacking the knight. My rook's also under attack. He takes my rook, take the knight with the queen, because I saw that at the end I'm also attacking this bishop. And when the bishop moves, I can drop the queen all the way back to h6. And here I actually completely overestimated my position. I thought I was just going to be completely winning because white's pieces are too far over here, and white just can't defend at all. But after h4, bishop takes h4, um, white can play king g2, and I saw all of this, but somehow I assumed that bishop takes g3 was winning. I don't know why I thought it was winning. But once I got to this position, I realized that it was not simple at all. And it turns out that I have to play this move queen to g5, which is just absolutely ridiculous, trapping my own bishop. But the idea is to threaten knight takes f2. And if rook goes to h1, then I have to take, and then like knight to e3, knight to f5, and I'm down a full rook. This is very suspicious. I don't think I'd ever do this, even if you told me this was the best computer move, I would not do this. Instead, I go bishop back to f6, which is a mistake. The computer can give this the orange mistake if it wants. I don't care. This is obviously the human approach. I still have this really nice passed pawn. King is slightly damaged due to the pawn. So I'm liking my position still, but I'm realizing that it's probably not completely winning like I thought. So I completely overestimated this exchange sacrifice. However, I still have a pretty good position. So now my opponent starts making some, not mistakes, but just ever so slightly inaccurate moves. What I was expecting was queen to d1, threatening to trade queens. And after queen to b2 and queen to b1, white would not only be threatening to trade queens, but also this checkmate over here. And if I play c2, then after takes and takes, you get rook c1, takes, and after takes, this pawn becomes a passed pawn. It becomes very dangerous for me. So this is what I was expecting, but instead my opponent played bishop back to e4, trying to get the bishop active. Makes sense. Also stopping c2. So this is a logical move. After g6, now my opponent plays queen to c2, which is a huge mistake. And the reason it's a huge mistake is because it allows me to play queen to d4, forking this pawn and this pawn. And once I can eliminate this pawn, that's like white's main hope of counterplay. Once I eliminate this pawn after e3 and queen takes, now I basically have no more worries. I'm going to have this c-file. I also have this passed pawn, which is going to stay here for a very long time. And with this pawn structure over here and the light squared bishop, dark squared bishop covering the dark squares, my king is very safe. So at this point, I was very happy with my position. And after a3, I play bishop g5, and at this point, we're on move 26. And the time control for this tournament is 2 hours for each side, plus an extra hour after move 30, which is kind of weird, move 30, and also a 5-second delay. And we're getting pretty close to move 30. My opponent is on about, like, I think 10 or so minutes. So I'm trying to pressure his clock and force him to find some accurate moves. So I'm making a threat on e3. So my opponent plays bishop to d3, which is an okay move, threatening my queen. I was starting to just take on e3, and after the pawn takes, I have knight to e3 with a fork. So I drop back all the way to c8, which the computer lists as a mistake, but my idea is after rook to c1, trying to my opponent can't take the pawn because I'm attacking the rook. So I can take attacking the rook. Yeah, because if I go to like a move for like c7, then after rook c1 and takes, my opponent can actually take threatening the queen. Or maybe there's a check, but I don't know. So I go queen to, anyways, I go queen to c8. I'm trying to keep this check open because if I make the check, my opponent just blocks the check. If I keep this check open, then there could be more tactics, basically. So we get queen to e3 now. Bishop here attacking the knight was apparently best. Now I play h5 to defend the knight. Bishop c2. We're both getting pretty low on time at this point, so our moves aren't completely best. Now queen to a8 check, trying to check while protecting the queen, and I can maybe set up some tactics now because there's a bishop takes e3 tactic with the bishop. So my opponent plays queen to f3, and I think at this point I'm now on 2 minutes. So I'm kind of panicking, but I've already seen this bishop takes e3 idea in advance if my opponent does play queen to f3. So now I'm just scrambling to calculate, does any of this work? Can I play bishop takes e3 or not? So at first I'm calculating takes, takes. Is this good at all? And I arrived at the conclusion that this is good because I just have too many pawns, and I can solidify this knight on d5. My opponent's never going to win my last pawn on the queen side, even if he wins this a5 pawn. But then I suddenly saw that there's this move bishop to e4. Uh-oh, spaghetti-o, right? The queen's attacked, and now I'm really, really panicking because if I don't play bishop takes g3, I don't know what else I'm going to do. I'll have to play like a nothing move. Then my opponent will know that I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want that to happen. So can I do anything here? And at the in the last minute, I see queen to d8, pawn takes, and queen to d2 check. Does this work at all? Maybe, maybe not. Does king h3 work? I didn't even look at king h3. King g1, c2. Can I push this pawn? I'm down a full rook, but can I maybe get the bishop back at least? Like my mind was just completely racing here. Oh, queen f1 guards the queen e squared, but I think there's queen takes e3 check and then take the bishop. I think this is good. And then okay, but queen to d8. What if he doesn't take? What if rook d1? Oh, well then rook d1 I can block bishop d2. So in like 40 or so seconds, I just looked at this and I decided that okay, let's just go for it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And my opponent does play bishop to e4, which is a mistake. And what he should have done is take first. But this is really hard to see. And then bishop e4, getting out of the fork. But my opponent also had like similar time as me. And the idea now I have to take this pawn and take this rook, and then and then if then I can push this pawn. But my opponent doesn't have to allow that. He can go bishop that. He can go king f3 instead, attacking the bishop to move the king. Wait, I don't even know what's going on. Yeah, bishop here. Then eventually I have to sack 4 pawns versus a rook with opposite colored bishops. Who even knows what's going on? I'd have no idea what would have happened if this happened. But luckily this did not happen. Instead, my opponent plays bishop to e4, and indeed queen to d8 does work. So very, very lucky that queen to d8 does indeed work because after takes, I didn't look at king h3, but since we made time control, I went, got some water, went to the bathroom, came back, and I saw that after knight to f2, king h4, there is queen to d8, checking the king on this diagonal, and so king h3 doesn't trying to hide does not work. King goes back, I just take the bishop with check. So, okay, so the king goes to g1, and now I push c2. Computer gives some alternatives like rook to d8 or f5. Yeah, very funny stockfish, but I'm pushing my pawn. So my opponent has to take. I recaptured. Now, if we look at the position, material's equal, but I have this very, very strong knight, which went to g4 on like move 13 or something, and it never moved. Very, very nice. Restricting the rook, which is, and you never want to have your king and rook like this. This is very, very bad, especially with the king cut off like this, because this rook basically does not exist. So I'm basically up a knight, and also a couple pawns. And if I can take these pawns, I can push these pawns. So I go here, going after these pawns because I want to take these pawns. So queen f4. I take this pawn. I check on c2, and now I notice that this queen's actually running out of squares. So I can play g5, attacking the queen. Can't go here, 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 can't take here, can't take here, can't go here. So what that means, can't go here, and what that means is you have to go here. Now I play f6, attacking the queen, and now you can't go here, 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 because of the queen. Can't go here, can't go here, so you have to go here. And now I go rook to d8, bring this rook in, and you can't stop checkmate. So rook to f1, rook d1. Now queen f2 is a threat because the rook is pinned, so my opponent just basically allows checkmate instead of resigning. And I win the 4th game. And this game was just completely insane, but just wait till you see game 5. Anyways, this game was completely insane. d4 apparently was good, but not as good as I thought. Things got crazy in your time control, and I did end up winning the game, which is very, very good because now I'm on 4 out of 4. And if I do good on the last day, I will win this tournament. So we'll see what happens. Obviously, we already know what happens, but I'll see you in videos with rounds 5 and 6, and they're going to be separate videos. So thank you so much for watching.